Is consciousness possible without a brain? Insights from Buddhism.
Look up at the night sky. The vast, boundless universe stretches beyond imagination. But there is another universe, equally profound, inside us, our consciousness. It is through this awareness that we perceive, think, feel, and exist. Science tells us that consciousness is the result of brain activity, but some traditions, especially Buddhism, offer a radically different view. Could consciousness exist beyond the brain? If so, what does that mean for our understanding of life, death, and the nature of reality itself? This exploration will take us deep into Buddhist philosophy, the science of the mind, and personal perspectives on the nature of awareness. By the end, you may find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about consciousness.
Chapter 1. What is consciousness?
1.1 Defining consciousness. Consciousness is one of the most elusive concepts in philosophy and science. Neuroscientists define it as the ability to experience, to have subjective awareness, and to reflect on one's existence. However, this definition still leaves many unanswered questions. If consciousness is purely brain-based, why do some people report near-death experiences? Why do deep meditative states feel like expansions of awareness beyond the body? Could consciousness exist independently from the brain? Buddhism offers a unique answer to these questions, suggesting that consciousness is not an isolated entity but a dynamic process intertwined with other aspects of human experience. From this perspective, consciousness is not merely a byproduct of neural activity but an evolving continuum shaped by past experiences, present conditions, and karmic influences. 1.2 The Buddhist perspective, the five aggregates. Buddhism rejects the idea of a fixed, independent self. Instead, it describes experience as a dynamic interplay of five aggregates, khandhas. 1. Form, rupa, the physical body and sensory faculties, including the brain, which serve as the basis for sensory experiences. 2. Feeling, vedana, the sensations of pleasure, pain, or neutrality that arise in response to sensory input. 3. Perception, sanya, the cognitive ability to recognize and categorize sensory input, forming the basis for memory and recognition. 4. Mental formations, sankhara, thoughts, emotions, desires, and volitional impulses that condition future experiences and actions. 5. Consciousness, vijnana, the subjective awareness that arises in response to the other aggregates, acting as the bridge between sensory perception and mental processes. These aggregates are in constant flux, much like the parts of a chariot. The chariot is simply a name for the collection of wheels, axles, and frames. Similarly, the self is just a label for these ever-changing processes. 1.3 Consciousness beyond the physical realm. From a Buddhist perspective, consciousness does not originate solely from the brain but exists as a continuous stream influenced by karma and past experiences. This view challenges materialist interpretations of consciousness by presenting an alternative framework in which awareness is not limited to the present physical body. 1.3.1 Rebirth and the continuity of consciousness. Buddhist teachings on rebirth suggest that consciousness does not end at death but transitions into a new form based on karmic imprints. The process of rebirth is not a transmigration of a permanent soul but the continuation of a causal stream. Much like a flame being transferred from one candle to another. This explains why some individuals report memories of past lives, aligning with the idea that consciousness extends beyond a single lifetime. 1.3.2 Meditation and expanded awareness. Meditative practices in Buddhism, particularly in Vipassana and Dzogchen traditions, reveal how consciousness can transcend ordinary sensory perception. Deep states of meditation, such as jhanas, allow practitioners to experience a heightened awareness that feels independent of the body. Advanced practitioners describe states of boundless awareness, supporting the idea that consciousness is not confined to neural activity but can expand beyond conventional limits. 1.3.3 The Mind-Only School, Yogacara. The Yogacara school of Mahayana Buddhism presents a unique theory of consciousness, proposing that reality itself is a projection of mind. According to this view, consciousness is not a passive receiver of an external world but an active creator of experiences. This aligns with modern discussions in quantum mechanics, where the role of the observer affects reality at a fundamental level. 1.4 The impermanent and non-self nature of consciousness. Buddhism teaches that consciousness is impermanent and lacks inherent existence. This is evident through the following insights. Momentary nature. Each moment of consciousness arises and ceases. Much like waves on the ocean, there is no single, unchanging entity that persists over time. Dependent origination. Consciousness does not exist independently but arises due to conditions, including sensory input, past karma, and mental formations. No fixed self. Since consciousness is constantly changing, identifying with it as a permanent self leads to suffering. Liberation, nirvana, is attained by realizing the non-self, anatta, nature of consciousness and breaking free from attachment to identity. 1.5 Integrating Buddhist insights with modern science. Recent neuroscientific research aligns with Buddhist insights by showing that consciousness is a process rather than a static entity. Studies on neuroplasticity demonstrate that the brain rewires itself based on experience, mirroring the Buddhist idea of mental formations shaping consciousness. Additionally, research on psychedelics and meditation suggests that altered states of consciousness provide access to realms beyond ordinary perception, reinforcing Buddhist claims that consciousness is more than a mere product of the brain.
Chapter 2. Consciousness in the Brain, the Scientific Debate.
2. 1. The neuroscientific view. Modern science asserts that consciousness arises from brain activity. This view is supported by functional MRI scans showing brain activity corresponding to thoughts and emotions, cases of brain injury leading to changes in personality and awareness, the fact that anesthesia can entirely shut down conscious experience. However, there are cracks in this theory. Despite advances in neuroscience, no empirical data fully explains how subjective experience arises from neural processes. The correlation between brain activity and consciousness does not necessarily imply causation. Some researchers argue that consciousness might emerge from more than just material interactions, suggesting a deeper, possibly non-physical dimension. 2.2 Near-death experiences, NDEs, and out-of-body perceptions. Some people who experience cardiac arrest report heightened awareness, seeing their body from above, or traveling through tunnels of light, while skeptics argue this is just the brain's last burst of activity. Others see it as possible evidence of consciousness existing beyond the brain. In many documented cases, individuals report accurate descriptions of events occurring while their brain function was medically undetectable. These experiences often include a sense of profound peace and detachment from the physical body, encounters with deceased relatives or spiritual beings, a life review, where key moments of their existence replay vividly. Some researchers suggest these experiences could indicate the survival of consciousness after death, aligning with perspectives in Buddhist philosophy that regard consciousness as a continuum rather than a product of the brain alone. 2.3 The hard problem of consciousness. Philosopher David Chalmers coined the term, the hard problem of consciousness, to describe the biggest mystery. How does non-conscious matter, the brain, create conscious experience? If neurons are just firing electrical impulses, why does being alive feel the way it does? Why is there a me experiencing thoughts and emotions? Some theories attempt to address this mystery. Panpsychism. This suggests that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, much like space and time. According to this view, even subatomic particles may possess a primitive form of awareness. Quantum consciousness. Some physicists propose that consciousness arises from quantum processes in the brain, particularly within microtubules in neurons. This theory, advanced by Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, suggests that quantum states influence decision-making and awareness in ways not yet understood by classical physics. Buddhist perspective. Buddhism challenges the notion that consciousness is solely a product of the brain. The doctrine of dependent origination, pratitya-samutpada, teaches that consciousness arises due to interconnected causes and conditions, not as an independent or static entity. Moreover, Buddhist teachings suggest that mind and matter are intertwined, but the mind is not reducible to mere physical components.
Chapter 3. Dependent Origination and Consciousness.
3.1 Dependent origination, a core Buddhist principle. Buddhism explains consciousness through the doctrine of dependent origination, pratitya-samutpada, which posits that all phenomena arise due to specific conditions. Nothing exists independently or permanently. Instead, all things are interconnected in a vast web of causality. This principle applies to everything, including consciousness, which emerges as a result of various physical and mental factors. The 12 links, nidanas, of dependent origination provide a structured framework for understanding how consciousness arises and perpetuates the cycle of existence, samsara. These links describe the chain reaction that sustains suffering and rebirth. 1. Ignorance, avidya, a fundamental misunderstanding of reality, leading to karmic formations. 2. Karmic formations, samskaras, intentional actions that shape future experiences. 3. Consciousness, vijnana, awareness arising from past karmic imprints. 4. Name and form, namarupa, the psychophysical basis of existence. 5. Sixth sense basis, samayatana, the faculties that allow perception and interaction. 6. Contact, sparsa, the meeting of senses, objects, and consciousness. 7. Feeling, vedana, the subjective experience of pleasure, pain, or neutrality. 8. Craving, tesna, desire that fuels attachment and suffering. 9. Clinging, upadana, intensified craving, reinforcing identification. 10. Becoming, bhava, the formation of karmic conditions for rebirth. 11. Birth, jati, entry into existence in a new form. 12. Aging and death, hara marana, the inevitable decay and dissolution of life. Each link depends on the previous one, forming an unbroken chain that sustains samsara. Consciousness, therefore, is neither an isolated entity nor a permanent self but rather an impermanent process shaped by past actions and conditions. 3.2 The brain as a condition, not the cause. In Buddhist thought, consciousness is not reducible to the brain, though the brain is a necessary condition for consciousness in this life. This view contrasts with materialist perspectives that consider the brain to be the sole origin of awareness. To illustrate this idea, Buddhist teachings often use the analogy of a lute. The sound of a lute arises due to the harmonious interaction of its strings. The musician, the air, and the act of playing. No single element alone can produce the sound. Similarly, consciousness arises through the interplay of multiple conditions, including the physical body, sense organs, mental formations, and karmic imprints. This perspective aligns with the Buddhist rejection of a permanent, independent self, anatta, instead of an unchanging soul. Buddhism posits a dynamic, interdependent process where consciousness arises and ceases based on conditions. This explains the continuity of experience across lifetimes while avoiding the notion of an eternal self. Furthermore, this view challenges the assumption that consciousness is merely a byproduct of neurological activity. While modern neuroscience provides valuable insights into brain function, it does not fully account for subjective experience, intentionality, or the continuity of awareness beyond physical death. The Buddhist perspective suggests that consciousness operates within a broader causal network that extends beyond material explanations. 3.3 The interdependence of mind and matter. Buddhism does not deny the importance of the physical body and brain but places them within a larger framework of interdependence. The body, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, the five aggregates or skandhas, continuously interact, giving rise to the illusion of a solid self. However, just as a river is not a single, static entity but a continuous flow of water, consciousness is an evolving process influenced by past and present conditions. Meditative practices in Buddhism, such as mindfulness and insight meditation, vipassana, aim to directly observe the transient nature of consciousness. By examining the arising and passing of mental states, practitioners gain insight into the impermanent and conditioned nature of all experiences. This realization weakens attachment to the self and fosters liberation from suffering.
Chapter 4. Rebirth and the Continuity of Consciousness.
4.1 The Buddhist view of rebirth. Unlike some religious views of reincarnation, Buddhism does not posit a fixed, eternal soul migrating from body to body. Instead, consciousness continues as a conditioned stream, shaped by past actions, karma, and dependent origination. This process, often compared to a river, is dynamic and ever-changing. Each moment of consciousness arises based on preceding conditions, and at the moment of death, a new stream of consciousness is formed, influenced by accumulated karma. Karma plays a crucial role in determining the conditions of rebirth. Every intentional action, whether wholesome or unwholesome, leaves imprints on the mental continuum, influencing future experiences. Good deeds lead to favorable rebirths, while unwholesome actions contribute to suffering in future existences. However, karma is not deterministic. It operates alongside present choices and conditions, allowing individuals to shape their spiritual path. Furthermore, rebirth in Buddhism is not limited to human existence. The 6 realms of samsara, gods, demigods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell beings, represent different states of existence influenced by karma. A being's rebirth is determined by past actions, but liberation from this cycle is possible through wisdom, ethical conduct, and meditation. 4.2 The candle flame analogy. The Buddha often used the analogy of a candle flame passing from one candle to another to illustrate rebirth. The flame changes as it moves, but the continuity remains, demonstrating that consciousness is not a fixed entity but a process of dependent origination. This challenges the notion that consciousness is merely a function of the brain, suggesting an ongoing flow beyond physical death. This analogy helps clarify the Buddhist rejection of an unchanging self. Just as the flame is influenced by surrounding conditions, consciousness is shaped by past actions and external factors. The process of rebirth is neither annihilation nor eternalism. It is the continuation of conditioned phenomena, bound by the laws of cause and effect. The candle flame analogy also highlights the role of mindfulness and wisdom in breaking the cycle of rebirth. By cultivating awareness and understanding the impermanent nature of existence, practitioners can weaken attachment and craving, the driving forces of continued rebirth. Through diligent practice, one can ultimately attain nirvana, the cessation of suffering and liberation from the cycle of birth and death. In Buddhist philosophy, The ultimate goal is not simply a better rebirth but the transcendence of samsara altogether. The realization of impermanence, non-self, and dependent origination leads to the cessation of ignorance and the achievement of enlightenment, freeing consciousness from the endless cycle of birth and rebirth.
Chapter 5. The Luminous Mind and the True Nature of Awareness.
5.1 The Mind as Luminous and Radiant. Buddhist texts describe the mind as naturally pure and luminous, but obscured by defilements such as greed, hatred, and delusion. This radiance is not something to be created but rather uncovered, much like the sun hidden behind clouds. The mind, in its unconditioned state, is vast, limitless, and inherently awakened, yet due to habitual patterns and attachments, it appears confined and obscured. The concept of the luminous mind, pabhasara sata, appears in various Buddhist teachings, particularly in the Pali Canon and Mahayana Sutras. In its purest state, consciousness is untainted, but through karmic conditioning and mental afflictions, it becomes entangled in the cycle of suffering, samsara. However, these obscurations are impermanent and can be dissolved through right effort, wisdom, and meditation. This perspective challenges the notion that consciousness is a mere byproduct of physical processes. Instead, it suggests that awareness has a quality that extends beyond transient mental states, hinting at a fundamental aspect of reality that can be directly realized through spiritual practice. 5.2 Meditation and Expanding Awareness. Through meditation, practitioners can begin to peel away the layers of conditioned habits and experience states of consciousness that transcend the ordinary sense of self. These experiences often manifest in profound ways. A boundless sense of self beyond the physical body. Many meditators report a dissolution of the conventional boundaries between self and other. This experience suggests that individual identity is not as fixed as it appears and that consciousness may extend beyond the limitations of personal identity. Deep states of stillness that seem to transcend ordinary perception. Advanced meditative absorption, jhana or samadhi, allows for deep tranquility and clarity, where thoughts and mental activity cease, revealing an awareness untouched by mundane concerns. These states point to a form of knowing that does not depend on conceptual thought or sensory input. Encounters with vast, interconnected awareness beyond individual identity. Some practitioners describe experiences of unity with the cosmos, where distinctions between observer and observed dissolve. This aligns with the Buddhist understanding of interdependent origination, where all phenomena arise in relation to one another, suggesting that consciousness may not be an isolated phenomenon but part of a greater continuum. These meditative insights provide compelling evidence that consciousness is not solely a function of the brain but may have a more profound and expansive nature. By engaging in deep practice, individuals can access levels of awareness that go beyond the materialist framework, revealing dimensions of mind that hint at its luminous and limitless qualities. Ultimately, the journey of uncovering the luminous mind is one of peeling away illusions and recognizing the fundamental clarity of awareness. By cultivating mindfulness, ethical discipline, and wisdom, practitioners can gradually free themselves from conditioned limitations, allowing the radiant nature of the mind to shine forth unobstructed.
Chapter 6. Living with this understanding.
6.1 The Illusion of Self and its Consequences. The illusion of a separate self is the root of much human suffering. This false belief in a fixed and independent I creates boundaries, isolating us from others and the world. We constantly seek validation and security to reinforce our fragile sense of self, while simultaneously fearing anything that challenges or threatens it. This attachment to the ego leads to anxiety, anger, jealousy, and a deep sense of dissatisfaction. Understanding the concept of anatta, non-self, in Buddhism provides a powerful antidote to this illusion. By recognizing that our existence is not independent but part of an intricate web of interconnected life, we begin to dismantle the illusion of separateness. The recognition of interdependence helps us see that everything we are, think, and do is influenced by countless factors: our past actions, our environment, our relationships, and the collective consciousness of humanity. This realization helps dissolve the constant striving for self-preservation and opens our hearts to a deeper understanding of life. Furthermore, understanding the impermanence of the self illuminates the nature of death. It is not a final end, but rather a transition, a shift in the flow of consciousness. Just as a wave rises and falls in the ocean, so does our individual experience rise and dissolve back into the vast, boundless sea of existence. The fear of death diminishes when we no longer view it as an event that annihilates, but as a transformation that is part of the continuous cycle of life and rebirth. When we see others as extensions of ourselves, compassion arises naturally. Our connection to all beings becomes clear, and we realize that their joy and suffering are as real and important as our own. This shift in perception fosters a genuine desire to help alleviate the suffering of others, knowing that their pain is our pain and their happiness, our happiness. 6.2 Applying Buddhist Wisdom to Modern Life. Living with the wisdom of non-self can profoundly transform the way we approach life in the modern world. In a society that often emphasizes individualism, competition, and self-interest, the teachings of Buddhism offer a radical alternative. Letting go of attachment to the ego allows us to see beyond the superficial boundaries that divide us from others and from nature. This can help us live with more ease, less conflict, and a greater sense of purpose. The fear of death, which is often a driving force behind much of our anxiety and insecurity, loses its grip when we understand that we are not isolated beings, but part of a larger whole. Rather than clinging to life out of fear, we learn to accept death as a natural part of existence. This perspective frees us to live more fully in the present moment, appreciating the beauty and richness of life without the constant shadow of mortality hanging over us. Cultivating compassion becomes an essential practice when we recognize the interconnectedness of all life. We begin to see that the happiness and well-being of others are inextricably linked to our own. By offering kindness and support to those around us, we enrich our own lives and contribute to the well-being of society as a whole. Meditation and mindfulness practices are key tools in bringing this understanding into our daily lives. Through meditation, we develop the capacity to observe our thoughts, emotions, and attachments with clarity, allowing us to detach from the ego and recognize the transient nature of our mental states. Mindfulness helps us stay present and aware in every moment, fostering a sense of inner peace and contentment. By integrating these practices into our lives, we cultivate a state of mental and emotional balance that allows us to navigate the challenges of modern life with greater clarity, calm, and compassion.
Conclusion: the expanding mystery of consciousness.
From a scientific standpoint, consciousness is often viewed as a product of the brain's complex functions. Neurologists point to the intricate networks of neurons and the electrical activity in the brain as the source of our thoughts, awareness, and subjective experience. However, this perspective is limited, as it fails to fully account for the vastness and depth of consciousness itself. The brain may play a crucial role in shaping our perceptions, but it might not be the origin of consciousness. Buddhism offers a different perspective. According to Buddhist teachings, consciousness is not confined to the physical body or brain. It is a boundless and ever-present phenomenon that arises due to various conditions, including our experiences, perceptions, and karmic actions. This consciousness is not limited by the physical boundaries of the body and continues beyond death, suggesting the possibility of an existence that transcends the material realm. In this view, consciousness is not an isolated phenomenon, but part of a larger, interconnected web of life and energy. The nature of consciousness remains one of the greatest mysteries in both science and philosophy. Through practices like meditation and mindfulness, one can explore the vastness of consciousness firsthand. As we cultivate awareness, we begin to realize that consciousness is not a static, localized entity but a dynamic, expansive field that can transcend the limitations of the physical world. Could our awareness extend beyond the brain? This is a question that each of us may answer through our own experiences and insights. As we journey into the depths of consciousness itself,